Hi everyone, thanks for checking out this video. Okay, so in the last lesson, I told you guys about for loops. And if you remember, a for loop is this type of loop where you basically have a temporary variable that you're assigning to be a bunch of different things. Could be assigning to be numbers within a range of numbers, or assigning it to be like things within a list. And then you have a block of code that you're repeating once for each one of those assignments of the temporary variable, basically. And yeah, just it's like I said, like a loop is a block of code that is getting repeated a bunch of times in the program. And I told you guys last time there's two types of loops. So we of course talked about for loops already, and then the second type is what's called while loops. So I think while loops are maybe even a bit easier to understand than for loops. A while loop is just a block of code that you keep repeating as long as a condition is true. So just to show you guys an example, we can say, let's say we have some variable x that equals 10, and we want to say while x greater than 0, colon, and then same rules as before. It's just it's going to be indented, hopefully automatically. But if it's not indented, just press the tab key yourself to indent the line, and then everything that's indented under this line is going to be a block of code that's going to be repeated as long as this condition is true. So as long as x is greater than 0, it's going to keep repeating this block of code, and that's what's called our while loop. So just to show you guys an example, maybe we print out x, maybe we print out x is greater than 0. And then something important with the while loops is that we need to make sure that the condition we're checking will eventually actually be false. So the last line, which is very important here, is I'm going to say x equals x minus 2. So that this way, each time this block of code gets run, x will be getting decreased by 2, basically. So that eventually it will be not greater than 0, and then eventually this will actually, like the while loop will eventually finish running. And this is super important to make sure you have this line updating the condition so that it eventually becomes false. Because otherwise, if we didn't have this line, if this was commented out, and then we tried running this program, it would just run forever. And I don't want to do that because that'll probably cause my computer to freeze up and I'll have to like restart idle, and it'll just be like really annoying. But that's a common like beginner mistake and a common bug that you might run into that probably pretty annoying the first time that you do it. I've definitely done it a lot of times myself just by accident. But yeah, you don't want to get those like infinite while loops where if the condition never becomes false, it'll just keep running forever, and that will be bad. Yeah, that'll definitely be bad. So just watch out for that. It's very important to make sure that the condition that the while loop is checking will eventually become false, or else it'll just keep running forever. But yeah, as long as we have this line, we should be good, I think. And then just try giving this a run. And yeah, so it starts off x is 10. It checks is x greater than 0, and 10 is greater than 0. So it executes this block of code, prints out x is greater than 0, and then it updates x to be x minus 2. So then it updates x to be 8. Then it goes back and checks the top again, and it checks, okay, is 8 greater than 0? And then 8 is greater than 0, so it executes the whole block of code again. Prints out x greater than 0, updates x again. 8 minus 2 is 6, so then checks is 6 greater than 0? It is. Prints out the block of code, runs the block of code, and it keeps doing that until eventually on the last one, x is 2. So when it does this update, x equals 2 minus 2, it gets x equals 0, and then it checks is 0 greater than 0, and 0 is not greater than 0. So now that this condition is no longer true, it's actually false now, the while loop ends and the program proceeds on. And yeah, in this case, we didn't have anything after the while loop, but we just could have put, like, just for example, like print the while loop has ended, for example, just to show you guys that it's proceeding on out of the while loop at this point. Okay, so that's basically while loops. Just to show you guys another example, like I said, with for loops, you can use them to deal with lists, and there's two ways to do that. You can say like for item in the name of the list, or item can actually be any valid variable name, and it will assign this temporary variable to each thing in the list. Or you can say for like index, for example, in range from 0 to the length of the list, and then use that index number to access the things in the list. Well, you can also use while loops to iterate through lists like that. So I'm going to comment this out, and then I'll show you guys a little example. So I'm just going to make up like an example list. I'll just call it my list. Maybe make it like 7 for 2.9 and then 1,000. Okay, and then we can say index equals 0, and then we can say while index is less than len my list, colon, next line should be indented in. If it's not, just press the tab key to indent it over like that. And then we can use this index to reference elements in our list. So we can say like x equals my list at the index of whichever index we're at. And then we can say print x, but then importantly, again, remember, if we just ran it like this, then it will run forever, because it will just index will just keep being 0, and it'll keep being less than the length, so it'll just run forever. So we need to have a line at the end saying like index equals index plus 1, for example. So that way it'll keep getting updated, and eventually it will not be less than the length of the list. By the way, question for you guys: why did I say less than here rather than less than or equal to? That's a little question for you guys, and I'll leave that as a little exercise for you to explore on your own. What happens if you say while index is less than or equal to the length of my list? Does that work okay, or does that cause some problem? I'll leave that as an exercise for you guys to explore yourself. But yeah, so let's just try running this and see what we get. Okay, so it looks like it worked. It had the index start at 0, and then we say while the index is less than the length of my list, we're going to say x equals my list at the index number. Then we print out x, and then we update the index number by increasing it by 1 each time. If we wanted to, we could increase it by 2, so that we're looking at like every other element. That's an option that we have. Then it'll go from 7 to 2.5, skipping over 4, skipping over 1,000. Yeah, just for example. Yeah, so that's basically while loops. Yeah, like usual, if you guys have any questions, if anyone's confused about anything, just let me know in the comments and I'll try to answer them. But yeah, that's basically all I have for this video. That's the two types of loops: for loops and while loops. Yes, that's all I have for you guys. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.